Hi, this is Amy, and I'm just going to be showing you today some of the steps that I take when I go to make one of my cut files. A lot of you have been asking for a little bit of help on how to do that. So I'm here in Photoshop. I have CS5, which is older. I think I bought it about 8 or 9 years ago, but I own the program outright, so I don't pay a monthly fee. You can, if you're just looking to kind of get started, you can pay a monthly fee to use Photoshop, which I actually recommend for beginners, because if you don't know if you're going to like it or not, when I bought this, it was about $600. So that was a pretty big layout up front, where nowadays you can do a pretty small monthly payment, kind of dip your feet in, but I would recommend that you try as much as you can. I'm completely self-taught when it comes to Photoshop, so I'm just showing you things that I have figured out myself. So whenever I'm working in Photoshop, I like to, I guess I didn't have to choose a paper. I like to kind of say this is the size that I'm going to be working with and have that be my canvas. So I'm going to be making a cut file today for a double spread, which is 6 by 8 on this side and 6 by 8 on this side. So there's my middle point there. And if you really need it, you can put yourself a guide. So you can go here and you can put it, oh, this is in centimeters, I want inches. So if we put it at 6 inches, it's just gonna show me exactly where my halfway mark is. So that's under view, and then you can create a new guide. So now I've got my 2 halves, 6 by 8 on this side, 6 by 8 on this side. I'm gonna take my font that I want, which is the blackout font. And I'm just going to make it bigger. This isn't my final size, but I'm going to type out the quote that I want. So this is the quote from Home Alone, and I'm going to center the text. And I'm going to enlarge it here so that I can, oops. And this is what I mean. I've just kind of figured things out. There's probably a better way to do this. And I say that with all of my Photoshop stuff, so that if somebody out there is a Photoshop expert and you're like, wow, she's really doing a terrible job here, please understand that I know that. This is just how I do things, and it's not necessarily the right way to do things. Now, I could leave it like this and then cut out holes off of a full white sheet of paper if that's what you were looking for, and you could size that to whatever size you wanted. But I made mine an outline cut so that I could then go in and replace the pieces. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to change the color of the text to white, and I'm going to, down in the effects bar here, I'm going to add a stroke. So now you can see that my font is white and it's got a black outline. So I'm just going to increase the size of the outline until it reaches a size that I kind of like. I tend to look at these little tiny spots here, and I would rather not have to pick out a little tiny piece of paper that gets cut. So I might increase that size so that I don't see it, or afterwards I might just fill it in with the paint bucket tool. So I'm looking here in the is, and then in the S's here as well, and the R even. So I think this is pretty good, but I do want the lines to be closer to each other. So I'm going to go over here to this is the text editing box here. And I have, once I increased it, it ended up at like a weird size, 95.72. And I might adjust that later. But I'm just going to try them a little bit closer and see if I can find, there, now they're touching, which I like a lot better. So that's probably a good ratio there for me. And then I'm going to increase it a little bit more. Oh, and again, I did that thing where I just grabbed the whole thing instead of just adjusting the corner. So because I moved them a little closer together now, I have the ability to make it slightly bigger than it was before. And you don't really need to worry too much about centering it up and down if you're going to cut it out after the fact. But then again, here's where I like to start turning it into something that I can use in my Sihouette software. So I'm going to simplify this. So it's this, here you check rasterized type, which means that I'll no longer be able to work with it as text. So this is a good spot to see that you've spelled everything correctly, which I have definitely done in the past where I've spelled something incorrectly and very much regretted it. So now it's a simple object, and I'm going to use my magic eraser to come back in. Oops. What did I do? I need to flatten it first. So now I'm going to go back in and I'm just going to take out all of the white. So this white is going to end up being open once I cut it. Oops. And you might do something like that. Thankfully, you can hit Control Z, which is undo, which I use a lot. So once you've got your file, so basically what I'm looking for here is the black is what I want left behind once my file cuts. And that, I'm going to cut it out on white paper. So eventually it's going to end up actually being the opposite. It's going to be white. But that's okay. And then once I've got everything erased that I want erased, and like I said, I'm going to leave some of these like little spots here where well, maybe not that one, but this one I'm going to come back in and kind of fill those in. So now I'm going to take my paint bucket, and on these slightly bigger ones, I'm going to fill in any unnecessary little tiny pieces that I don't think are really necessary. Oops, I missed two. So there we go. Yeah. I might have, if I had noticed this before, and so obviously I've done this already. I have the cut file. I've already made it. I'm just doing this as kind of an example to you. I might have actually moved the text a little bit closer. And you can do that up here also in the text box with this side to side one. And minus moves the characters all closer to each other. So I might have done a little bit of a minus, probably minus 50 or maybe even minus 75, just to move all the characters a little closer, because I see my S is kind of floating and so is my AL. But that's something that you can easily do. I can't do it anymore because I've simplified the document, but as you're building it yourself, you can do that. So what I would do now in my steps is I would save this, and I would save it as a PNG, and I'll just save it on my desktop. Now, when I made my copy of this cut file, I did it twice. So I did this one, and then I came back and I filled in absolutely everything so that I had a backer. And you might, like I'm seeing this isn't perfectly solid here. Sometimes you have to fill a couple of times to get rid of those fine white lines around the text. So this is going to be what holds my whole thing together here. This is going to be the back. And this is another great opportunity. If you have some of these small little pieces that you don't want to be open when you have a backer, and it kind of gives it a little bit more stability, you can fill some of them in. I'm going to undo that for now just so that you can see kind of how it looks when I pull it into the Sihouette Studio. So I'm also going to save this as sample one backer. And I'm going to put that as a PNG as well. Okay, so now I've flipped over to my Sihouette Studio software. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open those files that I've saved. And the great thing is when you save them, now you can import like JPEG files as well, but when you save them as PNG files these days, if you have the most up-to-date Sihouette software, what's going to happen is as soon as I load in my PNG file, you can drag and drop to from wherever it is saved and into your Sihouette design software, but I find that for me, my Sihouette Studio software tends to crash when I drag and drop. It doesn't love that. And as soon as I say that now, I see that it's not doing super well with this method either. I find my computer and the Silhouette software don't always play nice together. So now I can bring this in and it's already traced it for me. So there's no need to go through and trace or do any of those steps. It's got the red lines that I'm going to be able to send to the cutter itself. And this is a good way to kind of double check. If you put it into the send screen and you see these red lines light up like this, that means those are going to cut. So it's going to cut out all of the middles and everything. What I do is I save all these middle pieces to use as my guides for cutting out the letters out of my pattern paper. Or you can add washi on top of them and make them into your backers. And then you would just need to do the same with the backer. And so I'll open up the backing file here too, so you can, oops, that's not the right one. I got too excited. This is a different one that I've made. This is the Fa La La I made for my Citrus Twist Life Crafted album. I don't want to save that. Why did I click yes? I do not want to save it. Okay, I want to open the backing file for this one, example 1 backer. And if you leave them and don't do anything, don't like adjust the size or anything like that, they're exactly the size that you made them in Photoshop. So you don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to fit together, because these are exactly going to fit if you cut them just like this. If you want to adjust the size, what I would do personally is I would adjust the size in Photoshop before I save the file, and then I would export it at the exact size that I want to into the PNG format, so that when you pull it into the software, it's exactly the size that you want it to be when you cut it. So there you go. That's kind of step by step how I build these cut files that I use. I do also enjoy buying cut files from other people because it's a lot of picky little work. And like I say, if you misspell something or you do something quite wrong, I find that most people price their cut files very reasonably. And so that's definitely an option that's out there for you as well. I hope you have a great day.